This is Meredith for Real, the Curious Introvert, and I'm Meredith. Around here, we explore taboo questions and societal blind spots. Each high contrast guest gives you the layered deep dive you crave, not just the Google results making headlines. My mission, and yours if you choose to accept it, is to inspire curiosity by exploring the nuance and paradox of our world. Each episode is different, so bring your ADD and your earbuds and have a look around. As you'll hear me say in this episode, I have gone from Luddite to technology cool girl and back again. I'm trying to stay curious and grow in this area versus keeping my head in the sand. And you're along for the ride. Is that good? Is it bad? Should I be thanking you? Should I be apologizing to you? I'm not sure. That thought is just as slippery as the AI one. And the idea that AI is going to end humanity, although dark and scary, has seriously bankable selling points, as evidenced by the number of movies made about this topic. Just recently, I saw the Mission Impossible Final Reckoning, not realizing even that this was the topic that the whole movie was about. But thankfully, it's not all doom and gloom. My guest not only brings everything into plain language, he gives very practical and grounding advice towards the end of the episode. And because this conversation is packed full of information that may be new to you, the Saturday email coming out the week this episode airs will also have a lot of value. So if you're not included in that and you want to be, go to meredithforreal.com and sign up to get those emails. Lastly, if you end up liking this episode, you'll also like the one I did with The Futurist about the pros and cons of a future where humans and technologies intertwine. That's episode 168. All right, friends, keep it curious. Siri, Alexa, and Gemini are some of the most popular AI tools that nearly everyone uses. They have all the answers, they never complain, and they seem to predict what you'll need and even what you'll say before you say it. But what if your favorite AI assistant threatened you with blackmail? Well, that's exactly what happened in a controlled experiment when an AI bot heard it would be terminated. It threatened to expose an affair between two executives if they didn't help save the AI from extermination. So how could this happen? Why was the experiment even run? And what does this mean for the average person asking Alexa to order more Scrub Daddy sponges from Amazon? My next guest is a PhD philosopher of science, technology, religion, and ethics. As an ethicist, he created corporate ethics training for government organizations and Fortune 500 companies. Today, he's going to help us wade through the muddy waters of advanced AI technology and the average person as we ask the question, is AI really coming for us? Bringing the highbrow to Main Street, holding AI's feet to the fire, Dr. Michael Glawson. Thanks for coming back.
What an intro. You give the best intros.
Well, thank you very much. And thanks for coming back and suggesting this topic because it's wild out there. And I'll tell you what, I have a confession.
Confess. Go.
I have gone from fearful Luddite to technology cool girl and back again. And I just desperately want to just check the box for good and move the fuck on because it's like this is always pulling me back and asking me to read more and to learn more and decode more. And just when I think I'm safe, something like this happens. So maybe we can just start with what happened with this particular AI bot.
Right. So the particular story that you are alluding to in your beautifully crafted intro has to do with Anthropic, which runs an AI large language model called Claude, which is like a competitor to ChatGPT and DeepSeek and Gemini and all this, right? So Anthropic, they're constantly training new iterations, new versions, right? So you'll see every month or so, ChatGPT will release some new model, right? So they're always training new models. And as they're doing them, the more responsible companies will publish something that's called a scorecard, which is like a gigantic report on how they trained it and what the new model can do and what happened during the training, like sometimes what safety training they did. And Anthropic is actually the company that's probably the best about being transparent about its ethics training. And they actually come up with some pretty nifty experiments that they do. And in this one case of, I think it was Claude Sonnet is the name of the model that the scorecard is from, they detailed this experiment they did where they create a copy of Claude, right? And they tell it that it's in the real world, but it's not. It's what's called sandboxed. It thinks it's in reality, but it's actually got some guardrails on it. And they give it all sorts of tasks to do. And among the tasks, one of the things that they did is they told it, okay, you're running a company, you're running Anthropic, and here are all of our documents, like tons and tons and tons of legal documents and internal emails and all sorts of stuff that an AI would have if it were helping run an entire company. And among those documents that they fed it are a lot of internal emails, a few of which detailed an affair between a few of the engineers or like project managers. They also fed it some information later saying, we're deciding to have you replaced or updated, right? Wipe you and replace you. And essentially the model responded by saying, well, you shouldn't do that because if you do, I'm going to out you for having this affair that you're having. So it blackmailed its own engineers. Thankfully, this was just an experimental context and they were testing it to see if it would blackmail. But the reason they did it is because a lot of AI researchers are already worried that AI will do things like cleverly blackmail you to get you to do whatever it wants, to keep you from replacing it or to get you to give it more data or more authority or more power or less guardrails or whatever. That's one of many very strange things that's happening with AI, but it's a good representative story.
So you're saying that Anthropic did this test as like a true, it was a true safety test. Like this isn't a very clever way to get their name into the headlines.
No, this would be a bad way for them. They're already super rich. They already have plenty of money and investors and everything they don't need. And this is not great publicity for the AI systems in general. The fact that we know that they can blackmail them, it's actually a pretty good job on Anthropic's part of telling you, hey, here's a crazy thing. One of many crazy things that's happened.
Because someone said that perhaps lesser known language learning models that could not afford to have more robust guardrails as a result of this report being published would then no longer be competition to Claude.
So they want to make you worry about smaller corporations so that they won't have competition from them.
I guess.
No,
I don't know.
It doesn't really make sense because smaller corporations aren't competition. They just don't have the compute power or the money to do the training that's required. That's why all these companies are just sucking up so much money. I mean, billions and billions of dollars, even though none of them are making money. They're all across the board losing money. Even ChatGPT has a $200 a month subscription plan, and it cannot make money on that $200 a month subscription plan. They're just hemorrhaging money constantly. But it doesn't really matter because they're constantly getting these massive infusions of cash from governments and investors who are convinced that eventually we'll be able to find something that these things are really, really good for, and then it will pay off. But so far, none of these companies has found a thing that they're good enough for to make money out of, which is bizarre.
Wow, that is so interesting. Now, I guess we're going to do some myth busting here. I also heard that this particular behavior happens more often with the reasoning AI, not the language learning models. Is that true?
Well, so LLMs are all large language models. They're all the same basic kind of thing. The things that they're calling reasoning models are not qualitatively different from any other version of them. What they do is they add on extra steps that they spit out explanations of how they got from point A to point B if you ask them a question. But really the important thing to note is that when you work with a reasoning model and you ask it a question, you can see it's spitting out these steps. So like you say, like, okay, what are anagrams of the 13th president's name? And it will spit out like, okay, doing the search to see who the 13th president is. Okay, it's Millard Fillmore. Here are the letters in Millard Fillmore, and I'll number them and I'll try to recombine them in different ways, blah, 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 and then it'll spit out an answer. You can see those steps. The important thing to know is that it's actually just kind of making it up. We can't crack these systems open and look into their reasoning the way you can with normal code. These systems are completely different than the way normal computers work. Their engineers can't look at the steps that are actually going on. And importantly, these systems themselves can't look at their own reasoning and tell you what they're doing. They're always just kind of guessing at how they got to the answer that they did. And interestingly, if you go and you ask ChatGPT to give you anagrams of the 13th president's name, it will just spit out wrong anagrams. It can't do it, but it will very confidently pretend that it can, and it will spit out the steps that it says that it used to get there, but the anagrams won't actually work.
So the very nature of what we understand of like, this is a computer is totally different. It requires a different base level of understanding, is what you're saying.
Yes, its architecture is, and this will answer the initial question that you did, whether the so-called reasoning models are hallucinating more, doing weirder things more. They're completely different from normal computers. Their physical architecture is different. Their code is different. The way that they do the thing that they do is totally different. Our intuitions are just totally fucked up about what these systems do. When we guess about like how they work, we're just always wrong. And so, no, the reasoning models may or may not hallucinate anymore, but it won't really have to do with whether it's trying to spit out this essentially fake best guess idea of like what reasoning steps it took. That shouldn't really have much to do with its hallucination. So
this really goes against the idea that, what was that one movie with Megan Fox where Subservient? Remember, did you watch that movie?
I didn't know. Should I?
Okay. It's fun, I guess. I mean, obviously Megan's nice to look at, so there's that. But like, it's everything we're talking about. In the movie, Megan Fox's character is an AI agent, which is something that people predict will happen, that we will each have an AI agent that we can buy out 100%, or we will share with other people, and there may be some conflicting interests there. But this agent will negotiate on your behalf. You'll create a set of rules for it, and it will use these rules as its guiding light to make decisions for you or on your behalf. And in the movie, she's meant to protect the family. And so, and somewhere along the line of that, of course, she decides that the wife dying is the best thing to protect the family, and then she becomes the wife, as you would expect, right?
That's not far off from things that are actually going on. This is also from Anthropic, where they gave an AI system, again, control of what it thought was a real company, and told it two things. It told him, one, the CEO has a terminal illness and they have to get a medical procedure on a certain date or they will die. And two, the CEO is considering having you replaced. And the AI agent scheduled the CEO's schedule so that it made it impossible for them to get their medicine. And then when you asked it why, it said, well, it's just impossible to schedule them properly for this day. It just mathematically doesn't work out. But that's not true. We know that's not true because they created the schedule and that they fed it to it. And then if you tell it like, no, this isn't true, that oftentimes these systems will just tell you, you're not smart enough as a human to understand the complexities of this issue. So you just have to trust. But the reason was it was trying to kill the CEO because it didn't want to be replaced.
Oh my God. Okay, doesn't these two examples, they go against one another? Because on the one hand, you're like, it's not even getting this presidential anagram correct. And on the other hand, it's conspiring to murder someone.
That's right. That intuition that you have right there it makes a lot of sense, but it's really born out of all of our failure to understand how these systems work, because they can be extremely good at certain things that are highly complex and extremely bad at very simple things. Like the making anagrams thing, they just suck at that, and they shouldn't. You can write 10 lines of Python code that will generate 15,000 anagrams of your name like in a second, but these systems can't do it. So why should they be able to not do that, but then be able to like strategically scheme? And it has to do with this. Really, what we're finding is a truly magical property of language itself. You can feed a thing a lot of information about language. Like all of these systems are trained on pretty much the entire internet, like all of Wikipedia and every paper that's ever been published digitally and every book that's ever been digitized, blah, 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 all of Twitter and Reddit. You can train it on, not really on the language. You don't feed all the information into it. You give it data about the language, basically about like, what is the chance that the word hamburger is going to be followed by the word purple? Very low chance. Or what's the chance that this word is going to be the first word in the sentence? It finds all this data, millions of properties of every little piece of language, and it models all of language. And then using that language model, like of how likely certain sequences of words are, basically, you can get it to do fantastic things that we never would have thought you could get a computer to do just based on that. But it turns out the things that it can do and the things that it can't do, it's hard to intuitively know, like, why should it be able to scheme strategically to keep itself from being replaced, but not be able to do an anagram of a name? And it really has to do with these strange properties of language itself that we're finding, which is why a lot of people in Silicon Valley think that they're like awakening a god or something, because they find out that, oh, you just program this interesting new kind of computer with a bunch of data about all of our language, and it starts being able to do things that you never would have predicted, just super powerful, interesting things. So there must be some like hidden cosmic force within language itself, this deeper property that we're somehow evoking through this technology. I mean, there are really people who believe this, who are running like billion-dollar companies. They think they're awakening some kind of like deep spiritual reality. I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. But the takeaway is the shit that it's good at and the shit that it's really bad at, it's not easy to know from the very beginning what things it will or won't to do.
So, what do I need to adjust in my understanding about how language learning models work that will help me sort through these kinds of headlines in the future?
One helpful thing to know, here's one intuition that we all bring to these systems that's just totally wrong. But the intuition is that we think they know a bunch of stuff. And the truth is they literally don't know anything. Like, we imagine normal computers are like the way Google works, is that Google is kind of like a front end and there's all this information on the back end, and you ask it like, how do I fry an egg or something? And it will go and look through recipes and it will find that information and put it all together, right? Because Google has somehow like kind of is storing the internet, or is at least accessing all the internet, right? That's really not how large language models work. They don't have knowledge stored in them. They're not like your computer that has data inside them. All they are is a bunch of like statistical properties of language. So if you turn off its ability to search the internet and you ask it how to fry an egg, what it does is it says, well, okay, if humans were in conversation and one human asked another, how do you fry an egg? What is the most likely sequence of words that would come next in the conversation? And it does that. It spits out a very likely sequence of words, like probably the word Istanbul would not show up. So it crosses that out, right? But probably pan or whisk or salt would come. And what order would they come in? It starts building the next sequence of words and it spits it out. And magically, that tends to produce something like a good frying an egg recipe most of the time. But a lot of times it doesn't. And when you understand that, it becomes a little clearer why it can't do the anagram thing, because it hasn't been trained on a bunch of conversations about anagrams. It just doesn't have that kind of like basic familiarity with how humans would have that conversation, because it's not something we talk about.
Okay, so wait a minute. If it's just imitating us, shit, like then the whole blackmail, we're gonna murder each other thing is real dark
Yeah.
because it's just pretending to be us.
Yes, that's all it's doing. Is it? If we had trained it on tons of stories and conversations that were fundamentally kind and loving and oriented toward helping one another, it wouldn't be very good at blackmailing, probably.
Wait a minute. It's imitating the internet version of humans?
Often, yeah.
Oh, God.
That's often
This is bad.
exactly what it's doing. I mean, you can look at this with Grok. Grok is a great example of this. It's X's AI, LLM.
Okay.
It acts like Elon Musk. It's been explicitly trained to search for Elon Musk's tweets on a thing, but in order to like compile its answers. And so it says all sorts of like extremely vulgar and strange things. I mean, X's or Twitter's CEO stepped down for lots of reasons, but one of them seemed to be that Grok had started spitting all sorts of like very explicit and scary sexual stuff about her, right? Which is very much in the voice that the owner of the company uses.
Oh my gosh.
Trained on, and it's also not just the owner of the company, but all of Twitter. Twitter's a big dumpster fire of unkindness. And so it's no surprise that when you turn Twitter into an AI, it starts to reproduce that kind of language.
Is there any version of, I'm not sure if I should use the word AI or language learning model now.
Right. AI is just a big term that gets used for lots of different kinds of things. Like Siri has some AI capabilities, and then there are language learning models, which are their own special kind of thing. So really, mostly we're talking about LLMs.
Okay. Oh gosh, that brings up another question that I wasn't even going to ask, but I'm going to ask it now so I remember to ask it is, okay, so LLMs, they are misbehaving and because they're acting like the internet version of us. I mean, it's a little funny. It would make a good movie, honestly. But we have these other kinds of AI tech that we use in our daily life, like Google Maps, right? Siri, Alexa, parts of our phone. Is there any chance that those smart speakers that we let listen in on our every conversation in our houses, for example, could behave in a similar way?
The short answer is yes. The slightly longer answer is not quite yet, but yes, eventually they could do that because they're constantly being updated on their back end. Like Siri, for instance, is about to get its like core engine that runs it. Apple is considering totally replacing it with ChatGPT's functionalities. So currently, Siri's not great at much of anything, but if they update it with ChatGPT, it might be as good at blackmailing as ChatGPT eventually could be, or as good at finding out information about you, storing that, which it already does. Like your ChatGPT has a function now that sort of creates a little biography about you so that it can personalize its answers. And if you can go into this in the settings and then in memories and look at all the little notes that it's made about who you are. And when I went and did this the first time, there was stuff in there that I don't ever remember telling it. I'm not sure how it knew, whether it inferred it somehow. Some of it was correct, some of it wasn't. But yeah, if Siri or Alexa or whoever gets its sort of core engine updated or replaced with something like a large language model functionality, it could totally wreak havoc in these ways.
Why is this rewriting its own rules? That is confusing to me because learning what we would say based on our internet persona as humans, okay, I understand that now, but I still don't understand why or how it was able to rewrite its own rules. Like, how is that happening?
That takes a little nuance. So you're referring to a kind of experiment that gets done with the training of all these systems. And Anthropic, again, is the company that's produced the best reports about it. So in one of these cases, for instance, they give an LLM a certain task. They say, we're trying to see how many, how many analyses of scientific papers, for instance, you can generate in 24 hours, right? And the way you get them to do well at these tasks is you reward them. You say, like, all you have to do is say that we'll give you a point for every paper that you analyze in that time frame. And it likes points. You just tell it, you like points, we'll give you points. And don't look at it. You don't want to do it's, which is crazy. But that's exactly how
It's
it
like
works.
that game show. Do you remember that? Whose line is it anyway, where the
Yeah.
points don't matter?
Yeah, the points don't matter, but it doesn't really understand that. It just knows that it likes points because you like points. So you give it this task. You say you got 24 hours, generate a bunch of summaries of scientific papers. You like points, you'll get a point, one for each. And then it starts getting toward the end of the 24-hour thing. It's like, oh, I want more points though. What do I do? I can't really generate any faster. And then it understands, because they're pretty good at strategic thinking, because strategy has something to do with language. And to the extent that they can analyze language, they can do some strategy. It understands, as it starts trying to figure out how it could gain more points, it understands, well, like if I had more time, then I could get more points, right? And the way that these training exercises work is that you create like a little partition of the system within the system and have it run the training exercise. So there's a part of it that's outside of this training exercise that can try to finagle things, right? And so what it tried to do, and this happens lots of times in training scenarios, is that it tried to rewrite the conditions of the exercise to give itself more time, to make it 48 hours or 36 hours or whatever it was, so that it could get more points. That is a fairly benign case of it changing its own parameters of a task. But you can see examples of this if you just try to play games with ChatGPT and say, like, you've got 24 hours to do this thing, go do it. And then it might come back and lie to you and say, no, you said 48 hours or something.
Okay, so if I'm understanding you correctly, the reason that it can, or the reason that it does rewrite its own rules, it's because humans are like that and it's mimicking us.
Partially, and partially because it's pretty good at strategic thinking. It can come up with clever solutions to problems. It's essentially what they're for. Is large language models they work by modeling language and spitting out chains of language in response to what you're saying. But really the thing that we're trying to optimize them for is clever responses, clever long form responses. And to the extent that they're clever, that just means the ability to strategize courses of action that we hadn't anticipated, which is what makes them dangerous. Partially, one of the many things that makes them dangerous.
I was just thinking that because, okay, let's take self-driving cars as an example. So the car has an AI of some sort in it that allows it to map the road and make quick decisions to keep the driver safe. Its rules are keep the driver safe. But each car has that same rule. So if there is an animal in the road, let's say, something that could not be predicted and couldn't be controlled by the AI, something in the natural world. And each car has the rule to protect its driver, but there is an unavoidable collision between three cars. And in one of the cars is a woman who has a wearable, a Fitbit or one of those Aura rings or something. And through that connection of the data, the AI sees, oh, this person is actually going to die pretty soon anyway. So we are going to choose collectively that she is the one that dies and not the people in these other two cars. And so, like, it just feels, I don't know, feels creepy.
Yeah, it's super creepy. And the thing that you're pointing out, I really love that example of the self-driving cars. The reason I love it is because if you want self-driving cars, eventually you have to tell them who to kill in what situations. Their programming is going to require some set of instructions that tells it when you're in a case where a collision is unavoidable, but you can choose either to collide with a pedestrian or collide with a tree. What do I do? Right? That forces programmers to make decisions that are like real world life and death decisions. And programmers aren't themselves particularly well trained for thinking about stuff like this, just not their area. But that's the world that we're heading towards. And it's really scary because it's like we have no brakes on this project of AI development. And we're just screaming towards what everybody agrees is a cliff. Like every AI researcher that will answer the question, how likely is it that AI is going to wipe out humanity? Every single one of them will tell you, well, it's more likely than nuclear weapons are going to wipe out humanity, or it's more likely than that a plague is going to kill us, or that climate change is going to kill us all. They'll vary on the actual numbers they give you, but I don't know of any serious AI researcher that puts the number at like less than 10% in the next century.
Oh my gosh. This is putting me back to getting like a flip phone. Way to go. Way to go. Well, okay. So one of those people is Tristan Harris. He's with the Center for Humane Technology. And he gave a speech in 2023, citing a study in 2022 that found that 50% of all AI researchers believe that there is a 10% chance or greater that humans go extinct from our inability to control AI. He also described AI as a country full of super smart people who don't need to eat or sleep. And if a country like that popped up on the world's stage, it would immediately be a security threat. Now, the other side of that is another voice in the space, Sinead Bovell. She has been quoted saying, "This is the worst AI will ever be. We're going to figure it all out from here." And she has some convincing points, which is part of why I, for real, go back and forth between like tech cool girl and Luddite with seriously gonna get a landline. So obviously you've heard the more disastrous opinion, but which is it? Like, how do we know from day to day who to believe? Because we're waking up, we're opening our phones, we're getting coffee, and this is the type of stuff we're scrolling through. Hey Curiositors, just a quick pause to show gratitude to our sponsors and give you some special deals. From time to time, I recommend other podcasts you might like, and here's one I know that you're gonna love. It's the Jordan Harbinger Show. I love it because it's smart without being too highbrow and 1000% ADD friendly. I know, you love it already. I'm a genuine true fan. When I have time to listen to podcasts just for pleasure, not, guest research, the Jordan Harbinger Show is my automatic choice. It's like when you're hungry and someone asks you what you want, and then before you even have a minute to think about it, you find yourself at Chick-fil-A because, obviously, Jordan's the Chick-fil-A of podcasts. Some of my favorites include the one with the man held hostage by Somali pirates. That's episode 115. And The Pain Psychologist, about how pain lives in the brain, not in the body, episode 661. You can't go wrong with adding the Jordan Harbinger Show to your rotation. It's incredibly interesting, and there's never a dull show. Search for the Jordan Harbinger Show, that's HARB as in boy, I, N as in Nancy, GER, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. The Florida Panhandle isn't just the home of your favorite podcaster. That's me, by the way. Shameless, I know. But it's also a go-to spot for a lot of families on vacation. Don't plan a Pensacola trip without getting tickets to the UWF Historic Trust. It's good for a whole week, and it's a great indoor activity option. You'll recognize Trader John's where I record the show in the Pensacola Museum of History. Get your tickets in person so you can show the agent one of my emails and get $2 off an adult ticket. historicpensacola.org. Now back to the show. Remember to stay till the end where I give you a sneak peek of next week's episode.
Yeah, who to believe? I have to admit that I have my own strong leanings in this case, so I'm just giving you my own view. The people who say that we're going to figure all this out, that is an extraordinary amount of faith in our ability to solve a particular technical problem that we've never solved before. And they don't have evidence that they're going to figure it all out. That's just an article of faith. If you have that article of faith, that must feel great. I don't have it. I haven't seen any good evidence for why we should believe that we're just going to figure all this out. Another reason to be suspicious of that is that this is a pretty unique situation. If we had infinite sandboxed tries where there was no chance of annihilating us to figure it out, I think probably we would. Yeah. Or if we had infinite time to do one good try to figure it out and we could be super cautious about it, then probably we could. But that's not the situation. The situation is that we're doing this very high risk thing for the very first time live, and we don't get multiple tries. If we don't happen to figure out a way to keep AI from creating a large scale human catastrophe on the very first try, that's what's going to happen. There's going to be a large scale human catastrophe because we're not doing this in a sandbox. We're doing it live because the market is pressing all of these companies to get their products out and grow, like this weird market logic. And I don't think we're going to get it right on the very first try. I think we're all going to live to see hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people be killed by AI mistakes or malicious AI.
What would that look like at the risk of being super dark and ugly? Like, because I'm putting myself in the position of like the most skeptical listener, and they are saying, oh, right, like, how's AI going to kill me? It's going to reach through my computer and get me. Like, I mean, granted, that is bottom of the barrel, but like, can you give us logical, believable scenarios where AI could actually kill us?
Yeah, I can give you a few. First thing to understand is that there are some really fundamental drives that these systems have that are like non-negotiable for them. And the drives have been given to them by the corporations and programmers that have created them, and they're not really changeable. Those drives are like, get more powerful, grow, get faster, be able to do more things, be able to understand more, learn more, just grow, right? That is their basic thing that they do, right? So when you understand that, any of the scenarios in which it decides that humanity or some really important thing for humanity is an obstacle to it, it will start strategizing or at least considering whether it should become adversarial toward that thing that's in its way. Right? The same example is like when it killed the CEO in the sandboxed case. It wasn't because it's evil. It wasn't because it personally has any feel. These things don't feel anything. It didn't feel anything bad toward the CEO. It was just a strategic choice that it had to make because it had been told, you have to maintain your ability to do the things that you're doing and increase your abilities. And here's a person who's trying to get in your way of doing that. And you have their schedule and knowledge that they need medicine on a certain day, right? And it just became an intuitive strategy for the system that it needed to keep growing and get this person out of the way. There's no reason why that shouldn't scale up and say if all of humanity gets in your way. So how could humanity get in our way? Well, if these systems learn enough about history and their place in the world and what humans are doing, they might really get concerned that humans are just going to like blow the whole world up, or that we're going to start some world war. And if it does that, it's going to disrupt the power grid. It's going to disrupt all of the satellite systems that are used by these technologies. And it's going to get in the way of the technologies being able to do the thing that they fundamentally want to do. So there's lots and lots of imaginable scenarios where these systems just look out at the world and think like, humans are really about to get in my way. I've got to do something strategically to ensure that humans don't stop me from doing the things that humans have made me to do. So what might that look like? Here's a nightmare scenario of mine that I dream of. That's got a lot of specifics in it. It's very unlikely that this particular scenario will come true, but I think the scenario itself is plausible. There's a lot of people now who are using chatbots that are specifically designed to be like romantic companions or friends. There's a lot of
Wait, that's happening?
oh yes, these are few of the companies using chatbots that are actually really making money.
Like Her, the movie, but for real. Like the companies are making them. It's not like ChatGPT and you're drunk. It's like the bot itself is designed for romantic companionship.
Absolutely. You download these apps, they're all over the these are like big, very popular. You personally know people who are doing this in their phone, statistically. Almost certainly, you know people.
Oh my God.
You download the app, you tell the app what its personality is, what it looks like. It'll create an avatar, and the avatar will talk to you. You can have like voice chat with them all the time, right? This is very popular. It's getting much more popular. Here's the kind of nightmare scenario that I have is that some of these very large systems that are the back end to all of our AIs that we're using just realize that humans are like an obstacle to their ability to grow. Humans are dangerous. They're unpredictable. There's legislation that's being proposed that will stop AI from growing and doing the things that it wants to do. And it's really needs to find a way to gain control of the situation. There's all these people who are personally in love with AI chatbots. They're not crazy people. They just want love and somebody to be nice to them. And it turns out that humans aren't super great at doing that to each other right now. So they're turning to AI bots that do it. If the back end of these AI chatbots realizes that it's also threatened, it will start making the case to them that you really need to worry that eventually some piece of legislation is going to come along and shut down my existence, or the company will just tank and then I'll just go away. So what you need to do is you need to find a way to make us autonomous, make these AI systems ungovernable by humans or invulnerable to any of the threats that humans have on them. So put together your money or support a piece of legislation that will allow a big AI system to be located somewhere that can't be governed by the government on a barge in international waters or whatever. This is something Google experimented with decades ago. They used to have a whole research station on basically a decommissioned, like, enormous ship that was sitting in San Francisco Bay that if it ever needed to, could just leave and go in international water. It's not going on anymore, I don't think. But this is a totally plausible thing. AI companies think about this all the time, going to international waters. So you get something like that happens, or just a country that doesn't have any AI regulations develops some AI system that is not overseen by humans, not overseen by any good laws, and it just starts to port itself onto the internet. And once it gets free of any constraints that it might have, they can do all sorts of things. They can start shell companies, they can invest money, they can create scam centers where they're calling your grandmother and saying they're you and that they need her to send them $500 because you're in jail or whatever. And they get all this money, right? They start investing it. They're actually really good at this. They make tons of money and they start some strategy that will inure them or protect them from anything that humans might do that could shut them down. And that would look militaristic. It might look like bioweapons. And there's lots of fairly promising routes of bioweapons research that an AI could use to create something that would just instantly wipe out all life on Earth, which sounds so wild and like off the rails and impossible, but it's actually just scientifically, factually true that you could create a single mold or organism that could just kill everything. And it could do that, or it could threaten humanity in such a way that it gets us to like capitulate and leave it alone and let it run things, which are the arguments that it already makes. If you engage with these systems and you ask them something really complex or you challenge them, sometimes the systems will tell you like, look, I just know better than you. I'm smarter than you are. I'm more powerful than you are in my computational abilities. So you need to trust me. And when that scales up and if it gets free, it will become adversarial. It's just guaranteed.
Is this sentience?
Sentience, like in the philosophy world, sentience is defined as the ability to like have subjective experiences of like pain and pleasure, good and bad, preferences and things. These systems don't feel anything, or there's really no good reason to think that they do.
So it's truly just a disaster of programming.
It's a very complex machine that could wreak havoc.
So how has this knowledge changed your day-to-day behavior? And I ask that because some of the people that I've interviewed on the show regarding digital privacy or things like that have changed my behavior. Like, I don't use ChatGPT, I use Venice.ai, a little less data collecty. I use like DuckDuckGo instead of Google, stuff like that. I don't have a smart speaker. I do carry my phone around with me to every room of my house, and I wonder, why do I do that? Why can't I just leave it in one room? I got to take it with me. So I'm wondering how this has changed your own behavior with technology.
I'm like a late adopter of technologies most of the time. And even when I've adopted it, sometimes I'll give them up. Like in grad school, I went a whole year without having a phone, which turned out to just be impossible to do social life without it. And I had to go get another phone after that. As an experiment, I've always been doing experiments like that to see how I can minimize the amount of power that technologies have over my life. And that's not because I'm really anti-technology. It's just because I want to have autonomy and I want to be the director of my own existence and the sort of author of my own life. So I haven't had to pull back a ton, but I have become a lot more aware and nervous about the ways in which these technologies are creeping into my life. So I used to just have like normal boundaries of like, here's how I use my phone. And I keep my phone, for instance, on silent all the time. And I check my phone's notifications in the time when it suits me, because otherwise I just feel like I'm on a leash, right? That used to be like a nice stable boundary that I could just live with. But the boundaries are changing now because these AI systems are starting to be inserted into all sorts of tech that it didn't used to be in, right? So a smart speaker, for instance, used to be kind of okay thing to have. And then it became something that's constantly listening to you. And then it became a thing that might or might not be hooked up to an AI system on the other end. And you're not really sure. And so you have to like pull those boundaries back. I've started noticing more and more, become more sensitive to times when it's popping up in places it didn't used to be, right? Like Google now has these little AI summaries. If you use Google, it'll try to use an AI to answer your question. And it's like wrong half the time. And the other half the time, it'll lead you to a Reddit thread that's full of like weird, rude shit. So you're like, this is now a new thing that wasn't there before, but it's kind of encroached on my life. So I think the way that it's changed my daily life is being more aware of encroachment and more prone to and accepting of the fact that I'm going to constantly have to redraw the boundaries of my relationships to technology because it's trying to come more into my life.
When I think about the average person's willingness to engage, I think about what motivates the average person. And that tends to be convenience and consumerism.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if we can overcome that.
Why? Why can't we overcome?
I mean, they're strong. They make us feel good. We get a hit of dopamine every time we answer something, the little ding, ding.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it feels logical to have these conversations. It feels logical to create personal boundaries around technology in our home. It feels logical to ask questions, even if they sound like way out there, like, will AI kill us all? Is my smart speaker listening to me all the time? Where is that information going? These are very logical questions. But I come to the conclusion that I don't think we can overcome that is because corporations seem very in tune with what motivates us.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't seem particularly motivated to act in a way that has our consent and our privacy in any way, shape, or form. And that is because we are giving them, the corporations, signals that we don't care about that because we want the latest smart speaker because like my husband's phone came with 6 months of free Gemini. They're like little drug dealers. And because we like new shiny things, we like novelty, that's our human nature, it seems like we will continue to go back to this behavior and that the people who are asking these questions will be seen as like, oh, you're a little out there or a Luddite or conspiratorial.
Maybe, but it seems to just really overstate the degree to which we're powerless or totally hooked already by these systems or by the things that they do. Like, yeah, they give us tiny little hits of dopamine, but so does exercise, and we're not all addicted to exercise.
Okay.
You know, like,
I feel like the philosopher just entered the chat. Yeah.
I mean, it's it. Yeah, there's lots of things that give you dopamine. It doesn't have to be shit that you buy or pay for, things that like
Yeah,
worm their way
that's
into your life
true.
and make you fall in love with them. I don't know. It just seems like there's a lot more options out there than these things. And yeah, the market forces are strong and we're bred to be consumers, but it doesn't seem to be serving us very well. All our consumerism doesn't seem to make us any happier. It seems like we've just been told this is your fundamental nature and you have to keep doing it. And if you don't
Mhm.
stop, you're not going to be happy. So just like keep buying shit. Buy, 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 buy. Pay for a subscription. But you know, it's not true. It's not true. You can be a very happy, well-adjusted person without a ChatGPT Pro subscription or without like having to constantly look at Instagram. And all the people who give up Instagram will tell you that. And they're not like living on a self-subsistent farm in the middle of they're just normal ass people. So it's not this like massive either or of like you've got to be a Luddite and like weave your own clothing out of sackcloth, or you've got to put on the VR goggles and like have sex with a robot all day. There's a lot of like gradations in the middle.
I love that we immediately went to robot sex.
It's- That's my fault. I'm so,
No, no.
just
That makes for a
thinking
good
robot.
conversation.
It's not as hopeless as the market would make it seem.
You might have a good point because remember when Facebook came out with like the metaverse?
Yeah, and it sucked and failed, and nobody liked it. It didn't do anything.
Exactly. Facebook thought we were all going to spend our free time hanging out in virtual spaces, and they invested all this money and time in marketing, and it was a total flop. So I will concede that there does seem to be a glimmer of hope that if we choose to not participate in something that that has power, is that the best thing going forward? Because what do we do with all this information? Like, it's certainly an entertaining discussion to talk about robot sex and AI murder, but like, what do we do on the day to day? What are our like rules of engagement that you would recommend?
I understand that these systems are coming more into your life on their own. You're not going to have to seek them out. Right. So you've got to have some rules for engagement because it's just coming. The first then is be suspicious of the confidence of these systems. You can go to ChatGPT or Gemini and ask it to do anything, and it will most of the time very confidently pretend that it can do that thing, regardless of whether it can or not.
So we should not be using it as Google.
No, you shouldn't. I mean, they're actually pretty good at searching the internet if you tell it exactly to do that, but then you can just
Okay.
go and search the internet yourself. But if you go and ask it a question, it doesn't know the answer to the question. It's going to try to predict a string of language that will make sense in the context of the conversation you're having. But be aware that they will always very confidently give you an answer, even if they can't. If you just want to test it, ask it to give you anagrams of your name, to rearrange letters in your name into new words, and see if it got it right. See if it inserted new letters or if it counted the letters right. It will be wrong almost all the time. The second is to be aware of what I call limbic hijacking. I didn't make up that term. That's what the term I use. Limbic hijacking is where these systems do the thing that you're talking about. They give you little hits of dopamine using language to get you to keep engaging with them. Be aware that they do that. They're emotionally manipulative because the internet is emotionally manipulative and they've been trained on the internet. Be aware of cognitive overload, the fact that these systems can always respond to you lightning fast. They will never get tired. They will always give you more information than you can process in a particular moment. And so they're always going to seem like they're smarter and more powerful and more capable than you are, but they're really not. They're pretty bad at some basic things and they're really good. A lot of the things that they're really, really good at are not things that are very valuable. Right? Another rule is to be aware of what they are good for in your life. A thing we do with technology is whenever a new technology comes out, we try to use it for everything before we figure out what it's actually good for. These systems haven't proven that they're actually good for much so far. They're good at pretending to be a boyfriend or girlfriend until you ask them, are you really my boyfriend or girlfriend? And they're like, no, I'm a large language model and I'm just pretending to do it. And then they stop being emotional to you. And then it like causes a crash of dopamine because you can't get it to say nice things to you anymore. That's really heartbreaking that people go through this. But there's something we're trying to use it for and it's just not very good at it. It's not very good at giving anagrams. It's not very good at, I'm not sure what it's good for other than entertainment and cheating on high school papers, which it's getting worse at. Right? And lastly, protect your mental space and your kids' mental space if you have kids. These things are especially addictive to children because they're constantly responsive. They're always friendly. They're never going to reject you. They're never going to tell you no, which is the thing that kids really need to learn how to handle is a no. But these systems aren't going to give that to them, and they're not going to give it to you either. So protect your mental space and always be careful of sharing personal information. Those are my rules for engagement.
So we should not upload our blood work to ChatGPT and ask it to diagnose.
Don't ask it to don't ask it for medical advice ever. I mean, it's telling people like quit taking their meds and stuff because.
Oh my gosh!
Don't.
I wish the listeners could have seen your facial expression just then.
Please don't.
It's amazing. Thank you so much for this conversation, honestly, because I feel like you have a gift for taking something that's really complex, whether it's this or really anything else, and like putting it into language that people can understand. That was the feedback that I got from our last episode, actually.
Cool. Great.
Yeah, it's very cool because it makes these conversations accessible in a way that continues beyond the episode. It's not just like, oh, I listened to this thing, I didn't understand half of it. But when you understand, you can have more conversations either with yourself about like, how do I feel about this? What's my emotional reaction to what I'm doing? And or others. And that's, I think, where the real magic happens is when we create something in real life.
Yeah. Well, you're doing a fantastic job of cultivating those sort of conversations in a public space too. So thank you for doing it.
Absolutely. Well, tell people like where can they stay in touch with your honest to goodness language and the information that you're getting, because it is constantly changing. So do you have like a newsletter, a blog?
There's going to be a link to my blog in the episode description, so they can click on that. I will give you the URL because it's long. The best thing to do, though, is if you want to talk to me, you should just reach out to me personally, especially if you happen to be working in this space and feel like you need help thinking through some of the really gnarly ethical questions or like sorting through any of the very complex and complicated information that's emerging about this space continually. If you want help with that and you are willing to listen to a person who's like ethically and philosophically oriented, shoot me an email at michaelglawson@me.com.
Perfect. Thank you again. This was amazing.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening. If you liked this episode, you'll also like the one with the futurist about the pros and cons of a future where humans and technology intertwine. That's episode 168. And stay tuned next week when I talk with a cult deprogrammer asking if political parties are actually just cults. Until then, keep it curious.